Just a quick introduction. I'm Karan, and I lead international developer relations at GitHub. And what it is essentially, we have multiple teams supporting developer ecosystems around the world, and my team helps with the India ecosystem, LATAM, and a few other regions, etc. I've been a part of, the DevRel role for I think more than a decade or so, and started off as engineer writing a whole lot of application, then got interested into writing SDKs and things like that, and then moved into this specific role. Yep. Okay. And, so I've been across, multiple different roles within DevRel as well, like many of you know, on the advocacy side, on the programs side, where you're kind of running developer programs and, various other initiatives as well. Quite recently, at least this year, I've also had a really, really nice privilege to do a whole lot of executive keynotes as well. So, I think it's been like, just this year, it's been very, very, honor and privilege to present as a part of Satya Nadella's keynotes across Southeast Asia and Bangalore and other regions, speaking about GitHub, and also as a part of GitHub CEO Thomas, keynotes showcasing all the things which are new, etc., and telling the story of what GitHub is up to. So, in this specific, talk, what I really wanted to do is, while having some of the conversations, right, I realized, not just in this DevRelCon, but also previously, that there were many questions coming up saying that, okay, we are having these initiatives and programs here, there, in India, or in the US, or Europe, or somewhere else. How do we take it elsewhere? How do we grow this? Or what do we have to do, etc., right? Now, I want to share, a few key things related to that in my experience of really working with developer ecosystems around the world, and for all of you as DevRel professionals, what it is that could be very, very helpful. All right, let's test this. I'm fine, I'll run it. Okay. Oh, there's a bit of delay. Or is it? Okay. So I'll just be covering, really three key things. Apologies for my poor choice of using dark mode for my slides. Might be a little hard to read, but I'll be talking about like why international, what the ecosystem is like, and also how to really execute, all right? Just three key things that I'll be going over and giving you some more insights on. I know you might have some questions either related to GitHub or related to just how do you do DevRel internationally, etc. So I'll definitely keep a few minutes towards the end for the Q&A, etc. so we can go over that. All right, so let's go into the why piece, all right? Now, how many of you, really are thinking about, okay, I want my DevRel programs in other countries or regions as well? Okay, many of you. All right. Now, there are a few key things really to keep in mind, and these might seem like, all right, fine, this is, yeah, we know this or so, all right? But practicing it is very, very important. I'm sure that many of you in the ecosystem, right, you would have seen all various different kinds of, initiatives, programs, which are very similar. But when you start practicing some of those things, right, it becomes very, very, different in your own context, etc. So I think I need to angle it or something. Do you mind moving the connector just on this side so it's in line of sight? Okay, let's try that. No? Okay, thanks, Vishwas. I'm just going to yank this whole thing out and then try. All right, while we're just, again, getting that sorted, right? So one of the first things that really important is to think about why you are looking into, an international market, all right? This is very, very, very important. That is defining why your international market matters. Now, this could be multiple things. At first, you might be thinking that, okay, this is this is something which is like, all right, fine, we want to have presence elsewhere, or we want to, have users from here or here or here, etc. Most often, the challenge is that this is probably not clear. Okay, I don't know what happened over here. Yeah. Yes, please, I need help with that. Oh, there it is. All right. Oh, someone did that, or was it me? Fine. All right. Okay. So the first, the first thing really is whether is your product ready. Now, when I say is your product ready, you might be thinking that, okay, fine. Well, of course, we are a developer product, and then anyone can start using it, etc. Most often, the very tricky answer that I get from people is that, of course, it's for all developers. Anyone can use it, etc. But have you thought about the nuances of what it means for developers across the world to use it? Have you thought about things like language challenges? Have you thought about things like local restrictions? Have you thought about things like regulations which make use? Have you thought about things like sometimes network blockages and things like that? Have you thought about things like what does the workflow look like for developers when they're using their product? So there are multiple things which come into play, which defines, is your product really ready to go into different regions? And when I say different regions, I don't mean to say that, okay, India to X country, or X country to India, or US to X country, wherever be it, wherever you are thinking about it. So really, look very closely into what does your product look like, all right? And of course, there are multiple ways how you can do that. You can do that through some of your user research or study or talking to people, etc. All right? Next slide, please. I can? All right, let's try. What I was talking about. Define why your market matters. All right, and it's not just about going, international and saying that, okay, I'm gonna look at this market or that market or this market. Think about strategically why is that important. Say, you pick something like, Latin America, or you say that, no, I want Singapore, or you say that, no, I want, the UK or something like that. Why is it that it matters? Understand that. Sometimes it probably comes from your leadership, or sometimes it comes from elsewhere, from insights that you get. But really define it that this is important because we have, say, most of our customers from here who are interested. So we want to grow that market. Or you could also say that, okay, this market is important because most of the end users who are using our developer products are based here, because of which, we might get some more feedback or growth, etc. So defining that why your market matters becomes very, very important. Otherwise, you'll just be shooting in the dark, thinking about that, okay, this is important, but you might be, working things in a very, very similar way, all right? So think through why does this matter, and not just, across anywhere or so, but pinpoint. So, those were kind of like the couple of very why pieces, which are very, very important. When I said whether your product is ready or not, and also, whether the market matters or not. Now, the major part that you would also have to do a lot more thinking into is, what does that ecosystem look like, all right? Most often, I notice that in the, developer product ecosystem, everyone tries to reach developers across the world through social channels, all right? Probably they are doing a different tactic, like, okay, let's do some boosting in this specific region, or let's do some more events or conferences in this region, or something of that sort, without really understanding the ecosystem itself, all right? That's very, very, very important to know. What does that ecosystem look like? And when I say what, there are a few things. Now, different developer ecosystems have very, very different, strengths and maybe even weaknesses, all right? What does this mean? So, for example, if you look at a certain, say, even take a certain city within India, you will find a whole lot of developers focused around certain technologies or certain skill sets, right? Or, if you take a look at certain other regions, even in Southeast Asia, you might be seeing that certain ecosystems have, really good developers around this or that, etc. Right? So really, understand as to what are these different strengths. And what I mean by that is that, you might be thinking that, all right, fine, a project like Kubernetes is really, really awesome. It's helping everyone. But imagine taking that as a project to an ecosystem which is very heavy on PHP, all right, or which is purely heavy on front-end developers and the JavaScript ecosystem, right? So your approach and messaging could be very, very different to that ecosystem, all right? So think through as to what is the strength of this developer ecosystem. Developers are the same, what they work, how they approach to things. But the ecosystem on what kind of support they are getting. And that is all a function of many different things. It's a function of what kind of demand there is for developers, what kind of products and services they're working on, and multiple other things, all right? So keep this in mind that the ecosystems are different. It need not always be the same. Okay. Did I skip a slide? No? Okay. Can you go back? All right. Yeah. Now I'm going to skip. Are you doing this as a signal manually when I click your tapping? Yeah, that will be helpful. All right. One of the, again, important things where most often folks miss out on is there are many multiple industry reports which talk about the developer ecosystems, all right? Now, sometimes it might so happen that your leadership or people, way above are probably thinking about this, looking at the industry reports, etc., and define the why market matters part. But, they might probably skip off on, what the ecosystem is like or so. So that is where it might probably help you sometimes for you to read these own industry reports yourself to see if there are more insights that you will get about what the ecosystem is like, all right? Now, when I say that, it could mean that in certain regions, you might have, say, academia provide a whole lot of support to developers. In some regions, there is probably very, very strong government policies which encourages developers. In some countries, there are really, really big, service development centers which help developers grow, all right? So there are multiple stakeholders like these who are probably changing and supporting how the ecosystem, really grows, right? So many of that is usually captured in the industry reports. If you already have some of your users of your product from various different countries or so, right? Look at your own data. That will be even more insightful, even if it's a small sample set, even if it's just 10% or 20% of your users or developers are from regions that you're interested in, understand what are their characteristics and how they're using your product, how they're behaving, and even talk to them to understand a little bit more, all right? It's important to kind of understand what is the lay of the land and what, the ecosystem actually looks like. I'm calling this out a bit separately. What happens, what I've seen, a very, very common pitfall that many of them do while looking at, okay, I want to focus on this country or this region, etc. They look only at specifically developers. They don't look at what else is happening around them. And most often, there are a whole lot of different complex interplays which are there, which influence us. Now, for example, what I mean by that is startups, all right? Now, you might think that, okay, you're focusing on developers and what they're using, etc. But probably the startup culture is playing a very big role in the skill set of what developers are using, the tools they are using, and what they're actually producing, what they're doing in open source, etc. All right. Similarly, there is probably a really, really big, product focus which a specific region has. All right. Even if it's a very, very large company which has offices in multiple places, that specific company in that specific region might be focused more on a single vertical or so, because of which, your developers in that region might have a very different strength and might have a very different, ecosystem. So essentially, if you go with a mindset that it's working here, so it's going to work there because my audience is the same, it's going to work over there. It will be very, very similar to, thinking, saying that, okay, I can take an auto over here, so I can take an auto there as well. All right, because it's available also. Not really the case, as we all know. And talk to people. Talk a lot. Talk a bit, but listen a lot. All right. I see this happen, very, very often, because we all, as very, very passionate DevRel professionals, right? We tend to talk a lot. But what is also important, especially when you are thinking about some other regions where you want to enter into, etc., is listen. What are they telling you, and what are they not telling you about what's happening? And not just the developers who are using your product, but also talk to the people who could be potential users, and also, people who are around this ecosystem as well. People who are, in the academia, people who are in startups, people who are in enterprises, and all of these people, just to get an understanding, all right? Because this is something which will really, really help you to get a whole lot of qualitative feedback. In the previous slide, I mentioned saying that look at the data where you get some quantitative idea, but also speaking to people will give you a whole lot of qualitative insights as to, what's really happening, and, what is not really flying well, or what could be a whole lot more better. Is there an opportunity in the way that, your product works here or so, etc., right? Did I cover that? No. Oh, you are going way forward. Yeah. Okay, next. All right. So let's go back to the, how piece. I spoke a little bit around, why some of defining your product, whether it really makes sense for, the market or not matters, and how you define whether the market matters or not, and what you really need to think about. How do you go about it? All right. Just I can already see a whole lot of people interested in this part, but probably not the previous two. But I'll tell you, the success of how you do something is really defined on why you do this. I'm sure you might have heard of all of the, term called as spray and pray. All right. You spray things everywhere and hope something sticks. And then see that, okay, I'm going to try this thing everywhere across all regions and just see what happens. The problem, what happens is that you might be successful, or you might fail, or you might have some learnings. But either way, you won't know why. All right, which is why I spoke about the why and the what. Now, coming to the how piece is where I need help from my manual slide clicker. Thanks. All right. I mentioned about this. It could be different. So what I intend to say is that please don't try the what works here could work over there as well. All right. Because your product messaging would be very, very different. And the way it is being used could be different. And also what is the key problem that someone is trying to solve along with your product also could be different. So just give a little bit more thought about when you're thinking about tactics and techniques, how this could be different. A very, very simple example for all of you is that you go into some of the other regions outside of India and think about having a meetup on Saturday, not gonna work, because that ecosystem is different. Where Friday evenings or Thursday evenings might work better, or, late afternoons could work better rather than Saturday mornings. A very simple example. Similarly, there are a whole lot of, nuances where people probably, if you are in events or so, they might want to start off with lunch and then continue in the evening, rather than end with a lunch or end with whatever is evening snacks, etc., right? There's very, very different nuances which you might easily probably get wrong when you're thinking about how to execute some of your tactics in other places, etc. Now, I mentioned these two things separately. Whenever you are hearing about, where things happen in various different markets, you will just hear about localization, localization, localization. I mention this a bit differently. I mention this localize and customize. And the way that I would differentiate this is that you are localizing something means that you are making it easy for someone to use, either your product or being a part of your initiative or being a part of your program. What that means is that having this developer product in a local language or with certain other aspects which are very, very unique to that developer community. But you also need to customize. Need not be your product, but it could be your initiative or it could be your program. And what I mean by customize is that, say you are thinking about, say, student programs for that matter, all right? You might be thinking that, okay, in India, I'm thinking about student programs for people going to college and things like that, etc. And you might be surprised that if you go into certain other regions and markets, you will see that it's not just your undergrads, but postgrads and even doctoral fellows are very, very interested in part of being initiatives and programs. If you don't customize, you are probably letting out a very big audience out. Or similarly, you might be surprised to know that a lot of high school students are interested in a whole lot of development or usage of developer tools and products, which again might be very, very surprising. That's not localization, that's customization, either of your initiative or your program, making sure it's customized and very, very appealing to that specific audience as well. But I think you skipped a slide. Yeah. Okay. Is also to work with a whole lot of experts and partners. Now, you might be thinking that, okay, I'm going to get started and I'll do this in this specific region. I'll go travel, I'll get a whole bunch of my community members to do this, or I'm going to do some stuff on social. I'm going to get a few people who are very, very well known and all of those things. All of that is fine as tactics. But what's really, really useful for you is, kind of going back a little bit into our discussion yesterday when we were talking about metrics, is what are you trying to achieve in this market, all right? While you might get a whole lot of qualitative inputs when you're traveling yourself, getting your community members, etc. But if you're really looking at good adoption or feedback or whatever else it is, it's very important to work with some of the local partners and experts, because they might have much deeper insights into how the community and the ecosystem works and what really ticks them, which would be very, very surprising. And this is a strategy that so many organizations use as well, and partner with very, very specific partners and experts. When I say experts, again, it doesn't have to be only content creators or influencers. It could even be advisors. It could even be startup CXOs and other kind of people who know the community very, very well as well. And one thing that I have seen, despite of all of the things that we do right, foot on the ground, ears to the ground is what works and helps a lot. All right. Now, I know it's not really easy initially to think about, okay, can I or can we be there in this specific region every time we are thinking about an initiative or a program? All right. It's not easy. But I think the success is really when you're able to drive enough amount of adoption, enough amount of feedback, or whatever else you're looking at, such that you have a team member in that specific region, and also keep listening. What I've also seen is that many people say that, oh, okay, we have this initiative happening, this program happening in this region, and then they forget about it. So iteration is very, very important, and listening to what developers are telling you. You might get a whole lot of different insights from various different kinds of developers or stakeholders within that ecosystem as well. So, I mean, this is the gold standard that ideally you might want to achieve, of having very local presence in order to reach developers, be it through initiatives or programs, or through multiple other ways. I think that's all that I had, but I want to save a big amount of time for any of the Q&A. I'm sure you might have a whole lot of questions as well.
Hi, Karan, very good talk. Thank you for that. I would like to know your experience, like when GitHub came to India, you basically stretched your point in the talk of localization. What challenges GitHub faced when he came to India, and how did it's one of the biggest community India have on the GitHub right now. Like, did he has any challenges with the localization, and what part of that problem has been solved?
Yeah, good question. So, I think even before we had the launch of GitHub in India in Feb 2020, right? Not just us, but because of a whole lot of industry reports as well, everyone knew that India is a really, really growing community of developers, and it was something almost like a no-brainer that hey, we have to help support the community in India. One of the things that was interesting is that a whole lot of, from either a product perspective or even from an initiative or a program perspective, works really well in India as much as it would work in any other region, mainly because most of the developers have very good fluency with English. Thinking about localization, right? If you go into some of the other countries where English is not even a second language, and it's the fluency and proficiency is very, very less, localization becomes very, very important. Say, for example, if you go to any of the Spanish-speaking countries, or you go into Brazil, or you go into Greater China region, or you go into Japan, all of these places, right? Localization becomes very, very important. So in India, most of the developers, of course, and we, of course, as even a population, are one of the largest English-speaking populations, right? So localization, wasn't really a challenge. But of course, we brought in a whole lot of customization for many of our initiatives and programs. So to give you a few examples, when GitHub launched in India in Feb 2020, GitHub sponsors wasn't available in India, and we brought GitHub sponsors to India, customizing it for the needs over here. And also we had various different programs as well come in. And similarly, we had GitHub Stars program, which is like our MVP program, where, we again brought that to India. We brought some new programs, as well meant for the community over here. For example, initially we launched something as a GitHub open source grants, which was like a 1 crore grant for open source projects and maintainers. And this was only in India. This wasn't there anywhere else. It was, a thought process which came in over here as well. So there was, in terms of challenges, the only thing which I can think of is that it's such a large developer community and so much of an opportunity. So how do we support this large community with whatever is the limited resources that every organization has, right? So ensuring that everyone is supported, was the challenge. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Tanmay. Thanks for the talk. I basically want to ask you about, there are multiple programs that you run, right? So you mentioned that you basically, when you launch a program, so, multiple people join the program. So apart from the signups, right? When you launch a program, there is definitely some excitement. People join, sign up. You make sure that they participate, contribute, stay till the end of the program. But what happens is that after the program is done, how do you engage with that audience? How do you make sure that they stick around for a long time? You make sure that when you run the second program, a new program, the same community participates again, and stay for a longer period and do not go out as soon as the moment you finish the program. So how do you make sure that people stick around within the community?
Got it. That's a good question. So, there could be multiple objectives for any developer program, all right? I think what you're referring to is a program where you want to drive continuous engagement, all right? So most often, if you have seen a lot of the programs that we run, right, we want to empower developers as much as possible through the construct of the program itself, all right? What I mean by that is, say the example of the open source grants, which I mentioned about, which was a 1 crore grant, all right? And we had a program around it where we invited applications. There was a jury who was looking at the applications. We provided some funding and everything else as well. All right. Now, there were many individuals, maintainers, projects who got funded. Now, our objective was to really empower them with whatever funding is needed so they can kind of go ahead and then create that impact and back to the open source ecosystem. All right. And that was accomplished within the program itself. So, we weren't really looking to say that, okay, how do we get again all of these grant people into a next funding round? All right. Because they, within that program structure itself, had already reached a level where they started getting funding from other sources as well, where we've acted as a catalyst for them for both, their own, product as well as for GitHub as a platform, so that, the objectives of what we wanted to do was accomplished within that one program itself, without, bringing and re-engaging all of those people into the next program. That's first thing. The second thing is also that, we make sure that we have continuous open channels for communication and engagement. And of course, we don't break or burn the bridges anytime. An example here is that the GitHub Stars program that we run, all right? It is one of the most exclusive MVP developer programs in the world. And there are less than 100 GitHub Stars across the world. I think it's like 70 or 80 or so. Very, very exclusive compared to so many other such kind of ambassador programs. And it's by design, because we want to make sure that we are really recognizing and also seeking insights and also providing the support from the people who are providing the most impact to the community as well as to the GitHub. And there are, new stars who are coming in, stars who are graduating, etc. And, we make sure that there are always open communication channels for a certain program or so, where people who have graduated from the program, or people who are alumni, or people who have kind of completed the program, etc. We continue to engage them wherever there are opportunities. So I think it's, to answer your question in a very nutshell, it's all in how you design that program structure, such that it's not like, okay, you do this, it's finished, and then, it's done. We have achieved our objectives, etc. Our objective whenever we are designing the program is to make sure that that impact is delivered. Even if probably some of these numbers, are not, reachable or so, etc. If that impact is delivered within that one program itself, we have done everything that we had to do. Yes.
Give me one moment. I'll just finish this question and pass it over the mic. Yeah. So I'm just curious on a different line of thinking. That is, when developers use GitHub nowadays, developers is just beyond a set of repositories, right? We have GitHub CLI, we have GitHub Actions, a lot of things coming in. And when we run programs, usually as products which are at startup or bit more mature state, we also collect feedback and share it with product teams. Now, I was just wondering and super curious, for products which are as mature as GitHub, and when we collect feedback from a lot of different engagement programs that you run at GitHub, how does this feedback loop or feedback cycle start and close, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, one of the things that we do is we have a very open community discussion group. So if you go to github.community, you will find discussions around each product area and things like that, all right? Where people are continuously sharing feedback around multiple different areas of the product, like how you mentioned, it's probably an actions or a pull request or something that's happening, all right? And the product managers spend quite a significant time going through all of these feedback items. It's maybe not something which is as much as they would like to because of the volume, etc. And that's where our function and our role as DevRel folks also come into play, because we are foot on the ground, we have ears to the ground a lot more than the product managers. We are able to do a first level of triaging per se, and say that, okay, we are seeing a whole lot of this feedback which is coming in, and in some instances probably we are also seeing this for ourselves, and pass it on to the product manager, because there is a whole lot of trust from the product team, from the engineering team, and from all of the, even from the design team, etc., in the role that we're performing. Some of that feedback gets addressed very, very quickly. There was a very, kind of a similar feedback that we got where someone shared about a very, very minute thing around the pull request experience. And, we saw that, we noticed that, so that, oh, this is interesting, it's valid. Passed it on, to the product and engineering team, and within one day it was fixed. And that developer was super happy, oh, I just mentioned about this yesterday and it's already fixed today, kind of a thing, right? So we try to, again, iterate really, really fast. And, we do kind of like tens to hundreds of ships every day to the platform. Be it, like kind of these minor fixes or something that we got as a feedback, which is probably a very small thing or so, etc., right? So we kind of try to keep that agile. And for us as DevRel people, right, we help the product engineering teams with that first level of triaging, saying that this is real big feedback, and then they go back and then look at as to, yes, we are aware of it. However, it was not addressed because of X, or it's like, oh, this is really new, we are going to consider this, etc. So we have that open forum where we are very, very open for feedback. And at the same time, many of us are also open and help make that happen. I think Ram had a question.
I think that's the end of the session.
Oh, cool.
Because we are late by a little bit, so that's why we just wanted to end this.
No worries, thank you.
If you want to connect with Karan, please do
Yes.
connect with him later after this talk as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so in case I'm not around, feel free to reach out to me on email or any of the social networks you're connected. And happy to reconnect anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Karan.